The days that followed were a blur of activity at Fort Ember. Engineers worked around the clock to repair damaged ships and reinforce the fortress's defenses. Survivors tended to the wounded, shared stories of those they had lost, and began planning for the long road ahead. Though the immediate threat of the Krylos was gone, everyone knew the galaxy was still a dangerous place. Humanity's victory had bought them time, but not peace. Ryan spent most of his days in the hangar, helping the mechanics patch up Eagle One. The ship had saved his life more times than he could count, and he felt a strange sense of gratitude toward it. As he tightened bolts and checked wiring, he thought about the pilots who hadn't made it back. Their faces lingered in his mind, a constant reminder of the cost of survival. Laura often joined him, bringing updates from the command center or simply sitting quietly as he worked. She didn't push him to talk, but her presence was comforting. One afternoon, as they sat together on the edge of the hangar floor, she broke the silence. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. Ryan wiped grease from his hands and glanced at her. "We rebuild," he said simply. "It won't be easy. We've got nothing but ruins out there, and the Krylos might come back someday. But we've got each other, and that's something." Laura nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon. "Do you think people will remember this? What we did here?" "They'll have to," Ryan replied. "Not just the battle, but the lessons. We survived because we worked together, because we didn't give up. That's what matters." In the war room, General Harper gathered his officers to discuss the next steps. Maps of Earth's colonies covered the table, marked with areas of destruction and potential sites for rebuilding. The task ahead was monumental, but Harper's voice carried determination. "This isn't the end," he said firmly. "It's the beginning. We've proven we can fight back against impossible odds. Now we need to prove we can build something better." Dr. Emily Grant stood nearby, holding a tablet filled with data on Eagle One's performance during the mission. "If we're going to keep moving forward, we'll need more ships like this," she said, "and more pilots willing to take risks." Harper nodded. "Then we start training. Every survivor counts. Every hand helps." As plans took shape, word of the victory spread across the remnants of humanity's settlements. Messages of hope poured into Fort Ember, carrying gratitude and determination. People who had given up on survival now dared to dream again. Slowly, communities began to rise from the ashes, piecing together fragments of their former lives. Ryan watched these changes from a distance, unsure where he fit into the new world they were building. He wasn't a leader or a hero, just a man who had done what was necessary. But when Laura asked him to help train new pilots, he agreed without hesitation. If sharing his skills could give others a fighting chance, then it was worth it. One evening, as the sun set over Fort Ember, Ryan climbed to the observation deck. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, a stark contrast to the darkness of space beyond. Laura joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've changed," she said after a moment. "You're not the same guy who showed up here weeks ago." Ryan chuckled softly. "I guess I'm not. Maybe I needed this, to remember why I started flying in the first place." Laura smiled, handing him a cup. "Well, whatever it is, don't lose it. We're going to need you." Ryan looked at her, then out at the horizon. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose, a reason to keep going. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but humanity had proven it could endure. And as long as there were people willing to stand together, there would always be hope. Somewhere in the distance, a star twinkled brightly, a beacon in the endless night. Ryan took a sip of coffee and let himself believe, for the first time, that maybe, just maybe, the future would be brighter than the past. The explosion of the mothership lit up the sky like a second sun, its fiery glow reflecting off the faces of the surviving pilots. The Krylos fleet, once a unified force, began to scatter. Without their queen, their hive mind fell into disarray. Ships drifted aimlessly, some colliding with each other, others retreating into the depths of space. Humanity had struck a blow that would echo through the stars. Ryan guided Eagle One back toward Fort Ember, his body tense despite the victory. The ship's systems were battered, its shields flickering after the chaos inside the mothership. Smoke curled from small cracks in the hull, and warning lights blinked incessantly on the dashboard. But it had held together, just like Ryan himself. "Mitchell, report." General Harper's voice came over the comms, sharp but tinged with relief. "I'm here," Ryan replied, his voice hoarse. "Mission accomplished." There was a pause before Harper responded. "Good work, son. Now get home." As Eagle One approached Fort Ember, Ryan looked out at the remnants of the squadron. Only half of the ships that had left were returning. Each missing pilot was a weight on his chest, a reminder of the price they had paid. He clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus on the task ahead. There would be time to grieve later. When Ryan landed in the hangar, the survivors gathered around Eagle One, their faces weary but triumphant. Laura stood at the front of the group, her arms crossed tightly as if holding herself together. As Ryan climbed out of the cockpit, she rushed forward, stopping just short of hugging him. Her eyes searched his face, looking for any sign of injury. "You did it," she said softly, her voice trembling. "You actually did it." Ryan nodded, managing a faint smile. "We did it. All of us." Behind her, Emily Grant stepped forward, her expression a mix of pride and exhaustion. "You pushed Eagle One farther than anyone thought possible. That ship, and you, saved us all." Ryan shrugged, trying to downplay his role. "Just doing my job." General Harper entered the hangar, his boots echoing against the metal floor. He stopped in front of Ryan, studying him for a long moment before speaking. "Today, you proved something important. You reminded us what it means to fight, not just with weapons, but with heart. We won't forget that." Ryan didn't know how to respond. Instead, he glanced at the empty spaces where other ships should have been. The cost of victory weighed heavily on everyone, and though the immediate threat was gone, the scars would remain. Later that evening, Ryan found himself alone on the fortress's observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly above him, beautiful yet cold. He leaned against the railing, staring out at the void. For years, he had lived in exile, haunted by failure. Now, he had played a part in saving humanity. But the triumph felt hollow without those who hadn't returned. Laura joined him quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him without a word, standing beside him as they both gazed at the stars. After a while, she spoke. "They wouldn't want us to stop," she said softly. "The ones we lost, they believed in this. In us. We owe it to them to keep going." Ryan took a sip of coffee, letting her words sink in. She was right. The battle might be over, but the war for survival was far from finished. Earth's colonies were still in ruins, and rebuilding would take generations. But for the first time in years, there was hope, a fragile, flickering light in the darkness. "We'll rebuild," Ryan said finally, his voice quiet but steady. "And when the next challenge comes, we'll face it together." Laura nodded, a small smile breaking through her exhaustion. Together. As they stood there, side by side, the weight of everything they had endured seemed a little lighter. The galaxy was vast and full of dangers, but humanity had proven one thing. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, they could find a way to rise again. And somewhere, amidst the wreckage and the stars, Ryan allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had a future worth fighting for. The alien mothership loomed ahead, a monstrous structure that seemed to swallow the stars around it. Its surface was jagged and dark, like the shell of some ancient beast. Lights flickered across its hull, revealing countless openings and docking bays. To Ryan, it looked less like a ship and more like a fortress, a place designed to intimidate anyone foolish enough to approach. Eagle One led the squadron through the void, their ships moving in tight formation. The plan was simple. The other pilots would create chaos near the outer defenses, drawing the Krylos fighters away from the mothership's core. Ryan, meanwhile, would slip inside unnoticed, using Eagle One's speed and stealth to navigate the labyrinthine corridors within. It was risky, but they didn't have another option. "All right, team," Ryan said over the comms, his voice calm but firm. "This is where we split up. Stick to the plan and don't take unnecessary risks." The others acknowledged him, their voices steady despite the tension. As they approached the fleet, the first wave of Krylos ships emerged, their glowing weapons charging. The battle began almost immediately, beams of energy slicing through space as the humans fought back with everything they had. Ryan waited for his moment, watching as the squadron engaged the enemy. Explosions lit up the darkness, lighting the way forward. When the time felt right, he pushed Eagle One into a sharp dive, breaking away from the group. His heart raced as he aimed straight for the mothership, weaving between blasts and debris. Behind him, Laura's voice crackled over the comms. "You're clear, Ryan. Go." He didn't respond, focusing instead on the massive ship ahead. Eagle One's advanced sensors scanned for an entry point, finally locking onto a narrow opening near the base. With a deep breath, Ryan accelerated, slipping inside before the Krylos could react. The interior of the mothership was eerily silent compared to the chaos outside. The walls glowed faintly, pulsing with an unnatural light. Strange, biomechanical constructs lined the corridors, shifting and writhing as if alive. Ryan's hands tightened on the controls as he guided Eagle One deeper into the alien labyrinth. "This place gives me the creeps," he muttered under his breath. Laura's voice came through again, softer now. "Stay focused, Ryan. You're almost there." As he moved further in, the ship's defenses activated. Small drones appeared, buzzing toward him like angry insects. Ryan twisted the controls, sending Eagle One into a series of evasive maneuvers. He fired plasma bolts at the drones, taking them out one by one, but more kept coming. "Grant, I've got company," Ryan said tersely. "Keep moving," Emily replied. "You're close to the central chamber." Ryan gritted his teeth, pushing Eagle One harder. The corridor opened into a vast cavernous space, its center dominated by a massive pod-like structure. Inside, surrounded by glowing tendrils, was the Queen. She was larger than any Krylos Ryan had seen, her chitinous armor shimmering with an otherworldly light. Her eyes locked onto him, and a low hum filled the air, her telepathic voice invading his mind. "You are brave to come here, human," she whispered, her tone cold and mocking. "But bravery will not save you." Ryan ignored her, focusing instead on the target. He armed Eagle One's experimental weapon, a concentrated plasma charge designed to pierce even the toughest defenses. The ship shuddered as more drones swarmed around him, but he held his position, lining up the shot. Outside, the battle raged on. The squadron fought desperately to hold off the Krylos reinforcements, knowing their survival depended on Ryan succeeding. One by one, their ships fell, but they didn't retreat. They couldn't. Inside the mothership, Ryan steadied his breathing. The Queen's voice grew louder, taunting him, trying to break his resolve. But Ryan didn't listen. He thought of Fort Ember, of Laura, of everyone counting on him. Then, with a final push of the throttle, he fired. The plasma charge struck true, piercing the pod and engulfing the Queen in a blinding explosion. For a moment, everything went still. Then, the entire ship began to shake violently. "Get out of there, Ryan," Laura shouted over the comms, panic in her voice. Ryan yanked the controls, turning Eagle One toward the exit. Alarms blared as the mothership started to collapse around him. He flew through collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris and bursts of energy. Just when it seemed impossible, he broke free, emerging into open space. Behind him, the mothership exploded in a brilliant flash of light, scattering fragments across the void. Ryan let out a shaky breath, his hands trembling on the controls. They had done it. Against all odds, they had won. But as Eagle One soared back toward Fort Ember, Ryan knew the cost had been high. And though victory felt sweet, It left a bitter taste in his mouth. The final preparations were underway. Fort Ember hummed with nervous energy as engineers and technicians worked tirelessly. Back at Fort Ember, the mood was a mix of relief and sorrow. The battle had been won, but the cost was heavy. Pilots who had laughed and joked just hours before were now gone, their ships lost in the chaos of space. Ryan walked through the corridors of the fortress, his boots echoing on the cold metal floor. He could feel the weight of their absence pressing down on him. Every step felt heavier than the last. In the war room, General Harper stood over a large table covered with maps and data projections. His face was grim, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. Around him, officers whispered quietly, their voices low and strained. Laura sat at a nearby console, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she worked to decode fragments of alien transmissions intercepted during the fight. She hadn't stopped since they returned. Ryan entered the room, his flight suit still stained with sweat and grime. "What's next?" he asked bluntly, breaking the tense silence. All eyes turned to him, but it was Laura who answered. "We need to understand them," she said without looking up from her screen. Her voice was calm but firm. "Their patterns, their weaknesses. If we can crack their codes, we might find a way to end this." Emily Grant joined the conversation, holding a tablet filled with technical readouts. "The cruiser you took out, it was part of a larger network. We think the Krylos operate through some kind of central command, maybe even a single leader, a queen." "A hive mind," Ryan muttered, nodding slowly. It made sense. The aliens moved like one organism, their actions perfectly synchronized. So if we take out the queen, it could collapse their entire system. Emily finished for him. "But finding her won't be easy. She's likely deep within their fleet, surrounded by layers of defense." General Harper crossed his arms, his expression thoughtful. "If we're going after her, we'll need more than Eagle One. We'll need a plan, and a team willing to follow you into hell." Ryan frowned. He wasn't used to leading people, let alone asking them to risk their lives for him. But he knew Harper was right. Taking down the Queen wouldn't be a solo mission. They'd need every advantage they could get. Over the next few days, Ryan threw himself into training. He worked with the remaining pilots, teaching them unconventional tactics and maneuvers. Speed, unpredictability, and teamwork became their focus. Ryan pushed them hard, knowing that hesitation meant death in a fight against the Krylos. Some struggled to keep up, but no one complained. They all understood what was at stake. Meanwhile, Laura pored over the alien transmissions, searching for clues. Her breakthrough came late one night when she isolated a repeating signal buried deep within the data. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it carried a pattern, a series of coordinates. "I think I found something," she said, calling Ryan and Emily to her station. On the screen, lines of code scrolled rapidly, highlighting the strange signal. "It's coming from the heart of their fleet. Could this be where the Queen is?" Emily studied the data carefully. "It's possible. The frequency matches other high-priority signals we've seen. If this leads us to her, then we hit them where it hurts," Ryan interrupted, his voice sharp with determination. He looked at Laura, then at Emily. "How soon can we move?" General Harper entered the room, having overheard the conversation. "Not yet," he said firmly. "We need to prepare. Refit Eagle One. Arm our..." Eagle One shot through the sky like a streak of lightning, its engines roaring as Ryan pushed it to full speed. The alien ships loomed ahead, their sleek, insect-like designs glinting in the dim light. They moved with eerie precision, firing beams of energy that lit up the darkness. Ryan gritted his teeth and tightened his grip on the controls. This wasn't a test flight anymore. It was real. The squadron followed closely behind him, their smaller ships weaving through the chaos. Laura's voice crackled over the comms, calm but urgent. "Stick to the plan, everyone. Draw their fire away from Eagle One." Ryan didn't respond. His focus was absolute, every sense tuned to the battle around him. He twisted the controls, sending Eagle One into a sharp spiral. A Krylos fighter zoomed past, narrowly missing him. Ryan grinned despite himself. These aliens might be fast, but they couldn't match his unpredictability. "Mitchell, watch your six," one of the pilots shouted. Ryan glanced at his rear monitor just in time to see two enemy ships closing in. He yanked the controls hard, pulling Eagle One into a tight loop. The Krylos ships overshot him, their movements too rigid to adjust quickly. Ryan seized the opportunity, firing a burst of plasma bolts that tore through one of them. The ship exploded in a flash of light, debris scattering across the void. "Nice shot," another pilot cheered, but there was no time to celebrate. More Krylos fighters swarmed toward them, their glowing weapons charging. The humans were outnumbered, and the odds were against them. Ryan knew he had to keep moving, stay unpredictable. He dove straight into the heart of the enemy formation, weaving between their ships like a ghost. Eagle One's AI adapted seamlessly to his erratic maneuvers, keeping the ship stable even as Ryan pushed it to its limits. "Keep them distracted," Laura urged over the comms. "We're almost in position." The rest of the squadron did their best, firing wildly to draw attention away from Ryan. But the cost was high. One by one, human ships began to fall. Explosions flashed across the battlefield, each one marking the loss of a brave pilot. Ryan clenched his jaw, forcing himself to stay focused. He couldn't afford to hesitate. Not now. As he broke free of the enemy swarm, Ryan spotted his target. A massive Krylos cruiser guarding the edge of the fleet. It was heavily armored, bristling with weapons, and surrounded by smaller fighters. Most pilots would have avoided it, but Ryan saw an opportunity. If he could disable the cruiser, it would create chaos in the enemy ranks. "Grant, I'm going for the big one," Ryan said over the comms. His voice was steady, though his heart pounded in his chest. "Are you insane?" Emily replied, her tone sharp with worry. "That thing will tear you apart." "Then I'd better be quick," Ryan shot back. Before anyone could argue, he pushed Eagle One forward, accelerating toward the cruiser. The Krylos fighters scrambled to intercept him, but Ryan was already thinking 3 steps ahead. He zigzagged between their attacks, using the cruiser's bulk as cover. When he got close enough, he fired Eagle One's experimental plasma cannons, targeting the cruiser's weapon systems. The first shot missed, but the second hit its mark. The cruiser shuddered, its turrets sparking and falling silent. Ryan didn't stop there. He circled around, firing again and again until the massive ship listed sideways, its defenses crippled. "Good job, Mitchell." General Harper's voice boomed over the comms. "Now fall back before they overwhelm you." Ryan obeyed, pulling Eagle One away from the damaged cruiser. Behind him, the Krylos fleet descended into disarray, their perfect coordination shattered. The human squadron regrouped, battered but alive. They had lost ships, yes, but they had struck a blow against the invaders. As Ryan returned to Fort Ember, his hands trembled slightly on the controls. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving exhaustion in its place. He glanced at the empty spaces where other ships should have been and felt a pang of guilt. Victory came at a price, and today, that price had been high. When Eagle One touched down in the hangar, Laura was waiting for him. Her face was pale, her eyes red from holding back tears. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Ryan climbed out of the cockpit, his legs heavy with fatigue. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the weight of what they had done. They had won this round, but the war was far from over. The next morning, Fort Ember buzzed with activity. Word had spread quickly about Ryan Mitchell and Eagle One. Soldiers whispered among themselves, some skeptical, others hopeful. The fortress was still under constant attack, but for the first time in weeks, there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Something new was coming. An untested weapon, a reckless pilot, and maybe, just maybe, a chance to turn the tide. Ryan spent hours in the hangar with Dr. Emily Grant, learning everything he could about Eagle One. The ship was unlike anything he'd ever flown before. Its systems were complex, its controls sensitive to even the slightest movement. But Ryan didn't mind. He thrived on challenges, especially when failure wasn't an option. Every twist of the throttle, every adjustment of the controls brought him closer to mastering the craft. "You're pushing it too hard," Emily warned as Ryan executed another sharp turn during a test flight. Her voice came through the comms system, calm but firm. "Eagle One can handle stress, but not endlessly." "Relax, Doc," Ryan replied, his tone teasing. "I know what I'm doing." Emily frowned, though Ryan couldn't see her reaction from inside the cockpit. "You'd better," she muttered, "because if you break it, we don't have a backup." Meanwhile, Laura Bennett worked tirelessly to prepare the rest of the squadron. She knew Eagle One was their best shot, but one ship wouldn't be enough. They needed a team, pilots who could support Ryan, distract the enemy, and create openings for him to strike. It was a risky plan, but risks were all they had left. Laura gathered the pilots in a small briefing room. Maps and holographic projections floated above the table, showing the positions of Krylos ships surrounding Fort Ember. The enemy fleet was vast, its numbers overwhelming. But Laura refused to let fear take hold. "Listen up," she began, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "We've got one advantage they don't expect. Eagle One. Ryan will lead the charge, but we need to cover him. Our job is to keep the Krylos busy while he does what he does best, improvise." One of the younger pilots raised his hand hesitantly. "What happens if something goes wrong?" Laura looked at him, her expression softening. "Then we adapt. We fight. And we don't give up. This isn't just about us. It's about everyone counting on us to survive." Back in the hangar, Ryan prepared for his first real mission. The alien fleet was closing in, their weapons pounding Fort Ember's shields. If they broke through, it would be over. General Harper approached Ryan, his face grim but resolute. "This is it," Harper said. "We're counting on you, Mitchell. Don't let us down." Ryan nodded, pulling on his flight suit. "I'll do my best, General. That's all anyone can ask." As Ryan climbed into Eagle One, Laura joined him at the cockpit. She handed him a small data chip containing the squadron's communication frequencies. "Stay sharp out there," she said, her voice quieter now. "And remember, we're all rooting for you." Ryan smiled faintly. "Thanks, Laura. I'll try not to crash." She managed a weak laugh before stepping back. The engines roared to life, and Eagle One lifted off the ground, followed by the rest of the squadron. The sky above Fort Ember was dark, filled with streaks of light from Krylos weapons. The battle was already raging, but Ryan felt no fear, only focus. As they approached the enemy fleet, Ryan's heart raced. He glanced at the other ships around him, each pilot ready to risk everything. Then he turned his attention back to Eagle One's controls. This was it, the moment they'd been waiting for. "All right, team," Ryan said over the comms, his voice calm but commanding. "Let's show these bugs what humans are made of." With that, Eagle One surged forward, diving straight into the chaos of the battlefield. Ryan Mitchell stood in the underground hangar of Fort Ember, his arms crossed and his jaw tight. The place was a maze of humming machines, flickering lights, and engineers rushing around like ants. It felt nothing like the quiet solitude of his exile. He shifted uncomfortably, glaring at the sleek, futuristic fighter craft in front of him. It looked fast, dangerous, and far too complicated for someone like him. "This is Eagle One," Dr. Emily Grant said, gesturing proudly toward the ship. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Her lab coat was stained with grease, but her voice carried authority. "It's the most advanced fighter we've ever built. Speed, stealth, firepower, it's got everything." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Looks like it belongs in a museum, not a battlefield." Emily ignored his sarcasm. "It's designed to outmaneuver anything the Krylos have. But it's unpredictable. Even our best pilots struggled with it during tests." She hesitated, then added, "That's why we need you." "Great," Ryan muttered under his breath. He walked closer to the ship, inspecting it. The cockpit was narrow, packed with controls that glowed faintly in the dim light. It didn't look user-friendly. "So, what makes this thing so special?" "It learns," Emily explained. "The AI adapts to the pilot's style. But it needs someone who can push boundaries, someone who doesn't stick to standard tactics. Someone like you." Ryan turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "You're putting a lot of faith in a guy who hasn't flown combat in years." "We don't have a choice," Laura Bennett interjected. She had followed them into the hangar, unwilling to let Ryan walk away again. "If we lose Fort Ember, humanity loses everything." "You're our best shot, Ryan." He sighed, running a hand through his messy hair. For a moment, he looked like he might refuse. Then he glanced at Laura, seeing the desperation in her eyes. She wasn't just asking for herself. She was asking for everyone counting on them. He couldn't say no, not when the stakes were this high. "Fine," he said finally. "But if I crash this thing, don't blame me." Emily grinned. "Crashing isn't an option. Now get in." Ryan climbed into the cockpit, settling into the seat. The controls lit up as soon as he touched them, responding to his presence. A heads-up display appeared on the glass in front of him, showing readings and stats he barely understood. He frowned, trying to make sense of it all. "Don't worry about the details yet," Emily said over the comms. "Just focus on flying. We'll guide you through the basics." The engines roared to life, vibrating through the entire hangar. Ryan gripped the controls tightly, feeling the power of the ship beneath his hands. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Adrenaline coursed through him as he guided Eagle One out of the hangar and into the open sky. The night air was cool, the stars bright above him. Ryan pushed the throttle forward, testing the ship's speed. It responded instantly, shooting forward like a bullet. He laughed despite himself, the sound crackling over the comms. "How's it feel?" Laura asked, her voice soft but steady. "Like cheating death," Ryan replied. He twisted the controls, sending the ship into a sharp turn. Eagle One moved effortlessly, as if reading his mind. He pushed it harder, diving and spinning in ways that would have torn apart any other craft. The thrill was intoxicating. But it wasn't just fun. As Ryan flew, he began to understand why they needed him. Eagle One was powerful, yes, but it demanded creativity. Standard maneuvers wouldn't cut it against the Krylos. They needed someone willing to take risks, to think outside the box. When Ryan returned to the hangar, his face was flushed with excitement. Emily and Laura waited for him, their expressions hopeful. "So," Emily asked, "what do you think?" Ryan climbed out of the cockpit, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's wild," he admitted, "but it's exactly what we need. I'm in." Laura smiled, relief washing over her. For the first time in days, there was a spark of hope in the war room. Ryan Mitchell might be reckless, but he was also their best chance at survival. And for now, that was enough. In the dimly lit war room, General Harper leaned over the large table covered with maps and data projections. His advisors sat around him, their faces tense and weary. The air smelled of sweat and burnt electronics, a reminder of how long they had been fighting without rest. Outside, the sounds of distant explosions echoed through the fortress walls, but inside, the mood was heavy with silence. "We're running out of options," one of the officers said finally, breaking the quiet. His voice was low, almost defeated. "Our AI defenses can't keep up with the Krylos. They adapt faster than we can counter." General Harper nodded slowly. He knew it was true. The Krylos weren't like any enemy humanity had faced before. Their movements were precise, calculated, and eerily coordinated. It was as if they could predict every move the humans made. And maybe they could. The hive mind theory wasn't just a rumor anymore. It seemed to explain everything about their behavior. Laura Bennett looked up from her station. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, pausing mid-tap. What if we tried something different? She asked hesitantly. All eyes turned to her. She swallowed hard but continued. The Krylos rely on patterns, right? What if we gave them something they couldn't predict? And how do you suggest we do that? Another officer snapped, his tone sharp with frustration. We don't exactly have magic tricks lying around. Laura ignored the jab. Not magic. Humans. A human pilot. Someone who doesn't follow scripts or algorithms. Someone who can think on their feet. The room fell silent again. The idea hung in the air like smoke, thick and uncertain. General Harper rubbed his temples, considering it. Humans hadn't flown combat missions in years. Most pilots now worked alongside AI co-pilots, letting machines handle the split-second decisions. But Laura was right about one thing. The Krylos couldn't anticipate chaos, and no one did chaos better than a reckless human. Do we even have someone like that? An advisor asked skeptically, a pilot willing to take insane risks. Daniel Carter, still sitting quietly in the corner, spoke up for the first time. Ryan Mitchell, he said simply. Everyone turned to look at him. Daniel shrugged, feeling awkward under their stares. He's not exactly stable, but he's good. Really good. Used to fly test missions back when I worked on prototypes. Broke more records than rules. And trust me, he broke plenty of those too. General Harper raised an eyebrow. Where is he now? Exiled himself after a crash, Daniel replied. Last I heard, he was fixing old ships somewhere near the edge of Sector 7. Probably drunk half the time. The general exchanged glances with his team. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all they had. Send a team to bring him here, Harper ordered. And make sure he knows what's at stake. Hours later, a small group of soldiers arrived at Ryan Mitchell's remote hangar. The place was a mess. Tools scattered everywhere, rusted parts piled high, and the faint smell of oil hanging in the air. Ryan himself was sprawled on a stool, tinkering with an ancient spacecraft. His hair was messy, his clothes stained with grease, and his face lined with years of regret. When the soldiers explained why they were there, Ryan laughed bitterly. You want me? Seriously. I'm the guy who crashed a prototype into a mountain. Remember that? One of the soldiers stepped forward. A young woman with fierce eyes. It was Laura Bennett. I remember, she said firmly. But I also remember you pulling off maneuvers no one thought possible. We need someone like that now, Ryan. Someone who doesn't play by the rules. Ryan stared at her, searching for any sign of doubt. When he found none, he sighed deeply. Fine, he muttered. But if this goes sideways, don't say I didn't warn you. As they led him away, Ryan glanced back at the hangar one last time. For years, he'd hidden from the world, drowning in guilt and failure. Now, whether he liked it or not, the weight of humanity's survival rested on his shoulders. The galaxy was quiet, too quiet. The stars shone brightly in the vast emptiness of space, but beneath their glow, a war raged. Humanity's last hope, Fort Ember, stood on the edge of destruction. It wasn't just a military base. It was home to thousands of survivors, scientists, and soldiers. They had fled there after the alien invasion swept across Earth's colonies like wildfire. Now, it was under siege. Daniel Carter sat in the corner of the command center, his hands gripping a cup of cold coffee. He wasn't a soldier by training. He was an engineer who fixed broken machines. But these days, everyone did what they could to survive. His eyes darted between the screens showing the positions of enemy ships and the faces of exhausted soldiers around him. Outside, explosions lit up the night sky as alien weapons pounded the fortress's shields. Every blast made the walls shake, and every shake reminded Daniel how fragile their defenses were. Nearby, Laura Bennett worked tirelessly at her station. Her fingers flew over the keyboard as she tried to intercept alien communications. She was younger than most of the officers, with sharp features and a determined look in her eyes. Laura had grown up hearing stories about humanity's golden age, when Earth ruled the stars. Now, all she knew was survival. Still, she refused to give up hope. If we can crack their codes, she muttered to herself, we might find a way to fight back. The aliens called themselves the Krylos, though no one really knew what that meant. They were tall, insect-like creatures with chitinous armor and glowing eyes. Their ships moved with eerie precision, as if controlled by a single mind. And maybe they were. Rumors spread among the humans that the Krylos operated through a hive mind, led by a queen hidden deep within their fleet. For weeks, Fort Ember had been trying to locate her, but so far, they'd failed. General Harper, a grizzled man with gray hair and a voice like gravel, stood at the center of the room. He studied the holographic map floating above the table, his expression grim. The shields wouldn't hold much longer. If they fell, the Krylos would overwhelm them in minutes. He turned to his advisors, asking for options, but none of them had answers. Their AI systems, once hailed as humanity's greatest achievement, were useless against the unpredictable tactics of the invaders. Then came the transmission. A low, guttural voice filled the room, translated into English by the comms system. Your resistance is futile, it said. Surrender now, or face annihilation. The word sent a chill through everyone. Even Daniel felt his stomach tighten. The Krylos weren't bluffing. They never did. Laura clenched her fists. We can't let them win, she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Daniel glanced at her. What choice do we have? We're outnumbered, outgunned. Before she could respond, the lights flickered. Another explosion rocked the base, closer this time. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and someone shouted orders to reinforce the perimeter. Amid the chaos, General Harper stepped forward. His voice cut through the noise like a knife. Listen up. We may be losing now, but we haven't lost yet. Not while we still breathe. As the battle outside intensified, Daniel couldn't help but wonder if breathing was enough. Against an enemy this powerful, what chance did they really have?